Hello. I'm happy to be here. It's been a delightful evening. Peg always puts together delightful evenings, and this is no exception. And I'm a reader of Joyland, though not a writer-publisher of Joyland. And I would also like to offer my congratulations to our prior reader, Maggie, who is getting married on Saturday. At a wedding to which none of us are invited. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm busy that day anyway. I have a lot of friends and I have a very rich life. Hello. I have been on a long tour for this book, We Are Pirates, and I'm happy to be home from the tour and to be reading from this book not far from the San Francisco Bay, where much of it takes place. It is the story of a teenage girl who gathers a small crew of friends and denizens of an old age home and steals a boat to commit acts of piracy in the San Francisco Bay. It's dedicated to my sister because when I was 17 and my sister was 14, I had never seen anyone as angry as my sister was. And so it was a delight to read with many women in varying degrees of fury this evening. So you are my favorites. And so this is when we meet Gwen, who is 14. That's all I need to tell you, I think. It's so easy to steal things. Octavia was 14, just like Gwen, but she was taller and prettier than Gwen. She walked forcefully in this long flared coat, almost a cape, with deep cavernous pockets and a pair of boots that meant business. Gwen had seen a guy outside the Fillmore, an ancient rock club her dad took her to once with free tickets from work. The jagged gleam of the streetlights shone on a piece of actual metal on the toes of this guy's boots as he looked at her and sneered a little like she was a kid, licked his lips. The boots Octavia wore would kick that guy in the balls. Just like Gwen, Octavia was okay for a long time, and not just when she was a kid. 12 and 13, she was pretty happy. Or naive was the word Octavia thought for it. Then one day boredom just set upon her with a fierceness. There was nothing to do in the condo. She had to get away, but the neighborhood was lame and she wasn't allowed to take the bus alone. Up and down the Embarcadero, the tourists took joke pictures in front of the ugly statues, flying all the way from Japan or Germany to make the same stupid poses everybody made. The cars moved across the bridge to somewhere fun. Even the ocean seemed to be having a better time, waving and crashing and making cappuccino foam on the pilings. She was mad at the ocean. How stupid was that? Jealous of its schedule and its freedom when she couldn't even get a bus pass. Eventually, she was always at the drugstore. When Octavia was naive, the name drugstore was wrong because drugs were just one of the things way in back where the people coughed and waited in cheap chairs. But one day she was old enough to get it. The store was a drug, with the rush, the dizziness, the spending money to do it again, how it messed up your body and made your mind feel cool and false, all the stuff they warned you about with drugs that she was going to find out for herself the second she was allowed to take the bus alone. Her grandfather once said, running an errand with her, "Only in America are there places like this," and now she felt patriotic. She loved to go to the drugstore here in America, land of the free. But it wasn't free the day she had no money, not a cent. It was Memorial Day, and in this part of America there was a stack of candy bars discounted. It was the land of opportunity, so she took one. It slipped into the deep pocket of her cape and she spun around on the heels of her cool boots and walked right back out. Tourists were laughing. Maybe it was funny in France. She raced home and hid in the ugliest bathroom to eat it like a wolf with a baby animal, smeared all over her teeth before she thought to look at the calories. Gwen would have thrown it up again, but Octavia just threw the wrapper away and flipped her hair a little. Gwen could not stand it when her father tucked her own hair back behind her own ears without asking. She was careful and got better at it quick. The enemy wore red vests so they were easily spotted, and they were busy stacking cans and ringing people up, and some of them were retarded. The chocolate still flickered in her blood when she went back into the drugstore for another adventure. It was still Memorial Day, and the aisles were quiet. She was methodical, and her method was taking everything and putting it into her pockets. Lipstick, and savage, scarlet fever, and jealous rage. Barbecue potato chips and red licorice coiled inside a plastic pouch like rope on a ship. A handful of nail polishes, she had to be quick, couldn't choose the colors, and the back around the corner for a bottle of remover. Glitter for her face and neck, batteries she hoped for the right kind, thick, pleasing markers soaked with flowers, actual flowers forced into it. She suddenly remembered what it was called, shoplifting, and pictured lifting the whole place, the aisles tilting and tumbling their baubles and trinkety treasures into her pockets. Pink razors for her burnt leg, and then a keychain she thought Naomi would like, and when she realized she could steal for other people, it was an avalanche. A shoe bone for Toby II, more stuff for Naomi, a stuffed bear and a tiny license plate that said Naomi, 3 flasks of perfume, curvy and shapy like internal organs in her pockets, and she was done with Mother's Day for ages. Her father liked the electronic things, which were behind locked cabinets, but she grabbed a slick stereo magazine and managed to slip it into one of her boots. It would be a way to warm him up for taking the bus by herself. By now she was thirsty and rounded a corner to open a fridge and grab an iced tea in a bottle that felt so good in her hands. It was One Universe green tea, which the label said was good for the immune system and for Octavia's skin. No one had stopped her. No one had spoken to her. It was smooth sailing, all for one and one for all. Where does trouble come from? How do you get into it? It was no trouble to steal any of these things, and the thief was untroubled during the entire easy adventure, her immune system and her skin flushed and glowing. But of course it was a lie. One Universe Green Tea was a soda company in disguise, moving aggressively among young people to get a large share. There was no one in the whole One Universe who was concerned about young girls' immune systems at this time in American history, and the bottle Octavia held was cool and wet from refrigeration, slipping against the sweat on her hands, so when the guard said, "Miss," it shattered on the floor. Instinctively, she knelt down to pick up the pieces, and a razor fell out of her pocket, and one of the nail polishes, and the guard reached down. For a moment, Octavia thought he was going to embrace her. She should have kicked him in the balls. But he unbuttoned her cape and held it up as if he wanted to try it on, several more items clattering to the floor, and then spotted the magazine sticking out of the top of her boot. He took that too, and it unrolled open, and her heart cut its elevator cables and plummeted to where the chocolate was seething. She had grabbed the wrong magazine. This wasn't the stereo thing. This was Schoolgirls, with girls too old for school dressed up in plaid skirts and terrible pigtails, with their legs open and lollipops in their mouths. You could see their cunts even on the cover. The slow tide of tea reached Octavia's knees as the man stood over her in disgust. She had to say something. The guard grabbed her arm by the elbow and wrenched her down the aisle to a door she wasn't supposed to go in. He forced her through a room where 2 guys in red vests were eating noodles they had heated up in little cups. They stared as she dragged by, and the guard dropped her coat on the table, and Schoolgirls too, and the guys grinned at each other and at the magazine and at her. And the guard shoved open another door and pushed her into a seat that was still warm. There was an empty bag of chips identical to the one she had taken, and a peach iced tea and a bunch of the same markers in a mug with the name of the drugstore on it. It was his chair, the guard's. She looked up at the TV screens. Of course they had cameras. Of course they had been watching her. She couldn't even think of how she thought that wouldn't be so. She had never thought the idea of getting caught was even possible, back when she pushed the door into the store 10 minutes ago. Now there was nothing else but getting caught. He slammed the door shut and said something to the guys, and his footsteps walked away. Octavia shuddered and her throat felt hot. She grabbed one of the markers and wrote "shit" on the back of her hand, and when she was done staring at it, did not cry. Over her head, the big square light told her what it thought of this. Flutter, flutter. She wiped her knee, and the door opened again. "What's your name?" the guard barked. A man with greasy hair and a white shirt was standing next to him. "Octavia," Octavia said. "Octavia what?" Octavia said, "Needle." She was tired of making up things. "You live around here?" She didn't answer. What did it matter? On the television screens, one of the guys was mopping up her mess. "Sure," the guy in the shirt said. "She comes in with her father, her mother, and by herself." She didn't answer that either. "Pretty girl," the guy in the shirt said. The guard reached down and adjusted his belt. Octavia stopped clasping her hands together and put them down, and the 2 men looked at what she had written on her hand. "Gwen," Gwen said. She couldn't do it. She couldn't even explain why she thought herself as Octavia during the adventure, but she certainly couldn't do it any longer. Her boots didn't mean business. She wasn't taller or sexier than she was. She was Gwen, and she was in trouble. Octavia, I could call the police or I could call your parents, the guard said. Memorial Day, said someone else, one of the guys in vests maybe, Gwen couldn't see. Stay out of this, said the guy in the shirt. I'm just saying the cops aren't going to come, said the person who was supposed to stay out of it. The guard adjusted his belt again, which was gross. Octavia, what is your parents' phone number? My dad's at work, said Gwen, but the men just looked at her. Even the guy staying out of it leaned his head in. It was the guy she thought it was. Her father at work was not the answer to what these people wanted from her. She was going to cry, just as surely as she was going to get caught. They called her dad, and her dad called her mom, and her mom came and got her out of the drugstore. It had all happened so fast that the tourists were still laughing outside. Not the same ones, but Gwen swore she recognized them anyway. They were all, everyone out there, the same. Thank you.